Often the neglected
This hour
doctrine.
of Krista in the Afternoon is co-produced by Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
The Vocation Discernment Weekend helps single Catholic men and women ages 18 to 40 find answers to questions they may have about life as a priest, sister, brother, or consecrated laywoman. The next weekend takes place from June 11th through June 13th at the University of Dallas in Irving. The weekend includes presentations, panel discussions, and one-on-one personal conferences with diocesan and order priests, sisters, consecrated laywomen, brothers. For more information and to apply for the weekend, visit vapinfo.org.
If you want God to hear your prayers, hear the voice of the poor. St. Thomas of Villanova. Tithing to Catholic Charities, a large faith-based social service agency, is an ideal way for Catholics to live out Jesus' call to serve our brothers and sisters. We feed the hungry, house the homeless, place adoptions, and more. The Time for Giving campaign funds our 10 core services. When attending Mass on May 15th and 16th, prayerfully consider supporting Catholic Charities' mission to serve our brothers and sisters, or go to ccdallas.org/TFG.
Can Catholic dogmas go extinct or change? No, but renegades claim otherwise. Christopher Malloy's Against Recent Heresies offers a roadmap for today's confused Catholics. It presents clear teaching on hell, justification, the true religion, marriage, and sodomy. It shows that recent teachings don't overturn doctrine, but offer gentle beginnings for difficult conversations. We complete these conversations with the whole truth. Sophia Press will release Against Recent Heresies soon.
Hello, I'm Larry Linzen. David Walker and I represent Catholic Life Insurance in North Texas and are sponsors of this great station. Do you have questions about your life insurance or your retirement plan options? We can share some ideas with you and also some options. We can be reached at 214-274-3236. Again, 214-274-3236. Thank you for listening to Catholic Radio and supporting KATH 910 AM.
St. Mark the Evangelist Catholic Church in Plano has teamed up with the Catholic Charities Dallas Mobile Food Bank to offer food for those in need. Items being distributed include perishable food items from the North Texas Food Bank, such as fruit, vegetables, and other food items. The next visit is on Saturday, June 5th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. at the Smith Pastoral Center parking lot at the parish. Food recipients will remain in their cars, and their food will be placed in their trunks.
Thanks for listening to KATH 910 AM, Frisco, Dallas, Fort Worth, and North Texas on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Catholic radio for your soul. Heard also at grnonline.com and on your smartphone. Faith, hope, charity. This is the Guadalupe Radio Network. Radio for your soul.
Jesus, forgive us of our sins, save us from the fires of hell, and lead all souls to heaven, especially those in most need of thy mercy. All right, here we go. 2 Protestants went to a Catholic mass with the ill intent to spy on Catholics and hoping to catch them doing what they always heard Catholics do. Things like worship Mary, pray to the Pope, drink human blood. So during the creed, the entire congregation, they bowed their heads and they began whispering. And right at that moment, one of the Protestants turned to the other and says, "Wait, I hear them whispering something about the Virgin Mary. They know we're here. Those Catholics, how did they know it was us?" It can only get better from here. It's the David L. Gray Show, voicing truth and reason on the Guadalupe Radio Network. And I hope you're having a blessed day. I hope that you know that Jesus truly does love you and that he truly is there for you and that he deeply desires that for you to invite him into your life, into every aspect of your life. especially those parts that you don't think you need him there. You know, when I think of some of the most powerful and most influential Catholics in church history, some people just immediately come to mind. People like Charlemagne, or better known as Charles the Great, or the King of the Franks, or the Father of Europe, the protector of the church, who was crowned Emperor of Rome by Pope Leo XIII in 800 AD. And ruled much of Western Europe from about 1768 to 814, and made it his priority to convert his subjects to Catholicism. Other people I think of, I can think of King Louis IX, King of France, the Monk King as he's called, pejoratively called, or St. Louis as we know him today. The Crusading King, he's the patron of arts king, the builder and preserver of Catholic monuments and relics, and known for being held in high esteem amongst his peers in the ruling class. His reforms of the French justice system, ushering what was known as the golden age of medieval times in France. He is known for praying the divine office while in captivity in Egypt. He's someone I think of when I think of just great and influential Catholics. I think of the Gregory popes, Gregory the Great or Gregory the First, the converter of the pagan Anglo-Saxons. I think of Gregory the Seventh, who reformed the church from top to bottom during his reign from about 1073 to 1085. Then there was Gregory the 13th, whose solar calendar we still use today. At any point in time, I think whoever the Pope is, he's typically the most powerful and influential leader in the world. The superior general of the Jesuits is also typically, whoever he is typically one of the most powerful and most influential religious leaders in the world, because the Jesuits are the largest and most wealthiest religious order in the world. And their members usually have a large number of their members as Jesuits seated in some of the highest positions and most influential positions in the Catholic world. For example, if the Jesuits wanted to, they could destroy Catholic education from top to bottom and wage war against the orthodoxy of the faith. And no one would dare challenge them for centuries. And that is one of the, and of course, I say that strictly tongue in cheek because I think that's exactly what happened. But that was one of the reasons why the superior general has earned a nickname, the Black Pope. The Black Pope is always the general superior of the Jesuits. But what I've realized lately is that we're living in a time that I think historians may look back and write that Blasé Joseph Cardinal Cupich, Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Chicago, was one of the most powerful clerics in the history of the Catholic Church. And they will rank him right up there with the rest of them, like I named. And I think he is so powerful, right? I mean, he wages war against the church and the orthodoxy of the faith so successfully, but he's just one person. I mean, certainly the Jesuits have worked to pervert the faith globally, but they're an entire religious order. And they have a massive wealth. They have a lot of members, but Blasé Cupich is just one person and is even more effective than them. And for that reason, I think he should be called America's Pope. And I'll explain exactly why I believe that is a fitting title for this Archbishop from Omaha, Nebraska. And for the second half of the show, I'm excited to have Ms. Jannique Stewart back on for Pro-Life Wednesday. And Jannique Stewart she is the executive director of Love Protects, and she's a speaker and apologist at the Life Training Institute. And she'll be on to talk about this upcoming Supreme Court review of Mississippi's post-15-week abortion ban. So the Supreme Court is going to review this law coming out of Mississippi. Some people are calling it a test case. So we're going to talk about Jannique about that, see what she thinks about that, see what the outcome is likely to be. If you want to call in and be part of the show by opining or asking a question, I would love you if you called in to 877-757-9424. Again, that's 877-757-9424. 9424. Or I got the streams up here. You can post a comment on the Facebook or the YouTube or the Twitter streams that we're running, and myself or Sissel will try to see it. Sissel Anderson is the producer of this, so you can, if you call in, you'll hear Sissel's voice, and also you can see Sissel. You can see her face on the live stream, the web stream of the show on Guadalupe Radio Network called Back to the Father, where they're talking about the theology of St. Thomas Aquinas. That live streams on Fridays at 2 p.m. Catholic Morning, the Catholic Drive Time Show is the best Catholic morning show on all of Catholic radio. Of course, I'm biased. My friends were there, Joe McLean and Adrian. So, but no, really, this is the best. You got to start your morning with the Catholic Drive Time Show. Best content, best interplay between the hosts. Face to Face on Thursdays with Father Hezekiah. Great show about Eastern spirituality. They also do apologetics, so you got to listen to that on Thursdays on GRN. And Intersections every Monday morning with Bree Dow. They're talking about what's going on in Rome. So they also have great guests and great context about what's going on. What do we know about what's going on in the world from that perspective on that side of the pond? So, and lately, I've been struggling with food. Not how you think. I'm not having a gluttony problem. Nothing like that. I'm a pescatarian. I tend to watch what I eat, right? Because I'm getting that age now where I should be more careful about what I put in my body and, what's going on in the world. Everyone just wants you to take pills and vaccines to feel better. But, I just think you should eat a good diet, get exercise, get some zinc in your system. So that's what I try to do. So I watch what I eat, not calories. I literally just watch what I eat. But what I'm having is a quality problem with food. I just haven't had a good quality meal lately out of a restaurant. And I've been having a whole lot of average lately. And let me tell you about my struggles. And then I'll tell you how I've been able to rationalize these struggles theologically, right? So it started a few weeks ago when I traveled to Cincinnati, Ohio, and I took my family out to dinner. My daughter Deja, who graduated from college, she wanted to go to a seafood restaurant because she just loved crab. So we went to this crab restaurant. That's how we ended up there. And I personally don't like crab. I'm not into certain kinds of seafood. I'm a pescatarian, which means, I eat a lot of seafood, but I'm not into I don't think everything was meant to be eaten. Okay. Especially if it takes a lot of work to get there, like crabs. Listen, if I need an instrument to crack open the food, it's probably not for me. So I'm not into that whole thing. But that's how we ended up there. And I really didn't like anything on the menu. But I said, let me try the shrimp. Let me try the shrimp. You can't go wrong with shrimp, right? So, but I knew that it wasn't going to go well for me when the server had asked me when it came to take the order, do you want the shrimp with the head on or the head off? I mean, no offense, but who eats fish brains and eyes? I mean, I don't want my food looking back at me. No one has ever asked me that question in life. Do you want the shrimps, the head on or off? I mean, what type of question is that? I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing. So yeah, I don't like my food looking back at me. And nothing personal against the animal, but I don't need to make eye contact with my food, right? You're not a person. I don't need your respect, right? We're not even on the same level of respect, right? Your food and I'm on top of the food chain. Okay. I didn't have to look you in the eye. Right? So off with your head, animal. Off with your head, animal. But even if I was a cannibal, I'd be the same way. Call it animal eating guilt if you want to, but I don't want your eyes judging me while I eat you. I don't need that. I don't need to look at you in the face while I consume you. And this is really the same reason I don't want Harriet Tubman. I don't want her face on a $20 bill. I know that's the popular thing. We got to get Andrew Jackson off. We got to get a black person on a $20 bill. But I don't need Harriet Tubman, her judgment in two-barrel shotgun picture judging me when I'm trying to buy something trivial. I mean, look at me like, I'm out there buying like, I don't know, $1,000 bottle of bourbon, right? Because, I love bourbon. I don't want her judgment looking at me while I'm doing that. Like, that's not the reason, I built the Underground Railroad for you to go out here spending money on bourbon like that. No, I don't need her judgment. And my ancestors on my father's side of the family, they weren't even slaves. So I don't even know what Harriet Tubman she's talking about. So anyway, that was my first experience, right? Average food. Then later that day, we go to a Mexican restaurant that my sister-in-law, man, she raved about. And again, I didn't like anything on the menu except for the frozen margarita. So I said, hey, let me order some tilapia. All right, can't go wrong with tilapia, right? So the server then proceeds to bring out just some hot fish, just some hot seasoned tilapia spread over some Mexican rice. Completely unseasoned, just hot, right? I mean, heretofore, I thought you couldn't mess up tilapia, but here we are, right? Just hot fish. So there I am. I'm working on 2 just very unsatisfactory meals. And then just last week, we're in Columbus, Ohio, right? Because my friend Don, he wanted me to be the godfather to one of his twins, James. And so we're in Columbus. I told the wife, hey, Felicia, let's go out to our favorite restaurant in Columbus because we lived there for a lot of years. So we go to a place we like called the Refectory, right? The menu had prices, but the prices were printed very small, just so you know what type of place we're in, right? So we're going to spend a lot of money on food. But once again, I go for the seafood. I'm a pescatarian. He brings out the walleye. And once again, the food comes out hot, no flavor. So not happy. But I've been thinking about this theologically because we're all theologians, right? I mean, and this is what theologians do. We have to do every day. We have to contemplate. And this is how we do theology. This is how we seek more understanding in God. We're all theologians. Some are degree theologians, various degrees of, if you have a degree, undergraduate, graduate degree, a terminal degree. But we're all theologians, just like we're all priests. Some of us are ordained priests. Most of us are not, but we're all priests. So we're all theologians, some academics, some scholars, some publishing peer-reviewed papers. Most don't, but we're all theologians. So, and like I said, the job of the theologian is to do theology, right? So I'm trying to understand, and I think what theologians are trying to do, they're trying to understand the extraordinary of God through the ordinary of the day. Trying to understand the extraordinary of God through the ordinary of the day. So I'm contemplating my horrible food experiences lately. I think what God is trying to remind me is that there is no food on earth that's going to satisfy me. There's no food on earth that's going to satisfy me. And I shouldn't even expect it to. I shouldn't even expect to be disappointed by it. So the only food I should yearn for is the Holy Eucharist. Well, that's me doing theology about food. So this is the David L. Gray Show, voicing truth and reason on the Guadalupe Radio Network. If you'd like to call in and opine, please do at 877-757-9424. Again, that's 877-757-9424. Or if you're watching the live streams, you can comment there. Be happy to take your call or comment. So Blasé Cupich, Blasé Joseph Cardinal Cupich. Let's talk about him and why I think we should call him America's Pope, and why I think that he'll go down as one of the most influential clerics in the history of the Catholic Church. Incredibly powerful people are rare. Incredibly powerful people are rare. But Blasé Cupich, who no tradition-loving, no Orthodox-loving Catholic probably likes, okay? I mean, in fact, I think Church Militant had a survey back in 2019, and Cardinal Cupich was ranked the worst bishop in the United States on trustworthiness, the criteria of trustworthiness and orthodoxy. I think there's over like nearly 4,000 people in this survey. He's the worst, all right? So people who love tradition, love orthodoxy, tend not to like Blasé Cupich, if you never heard of him. So how is it, you may be asking, that I think historians should call him America's Pope if he's viewed as the worst Pope? See, there are 3 qualities that truly powerful and rare people share. And Cupich has all 3 of these qualities. People like Bill Gates has them. George Soros, Vladimir Putin also share these qualities. And let me lay them out for you. The first one, Truly powerful people can do what no one else can do. They can do what no one else can do. Whether it's a rare political figure we're looking at, or maybe even an athlete, the first quality is that they're able to do no one else can. These qualities separate the ordinary from the special. Barry Sanders, Walter Payton, John Elway, Larry Bird. No one else could do what they can do. That's why they're great. Bill Gates is rare because no one else can tell you that they're going to use a vaccine to cut half of the population of the world, and also tell you that we should prepare for coronavirus. Then the vaccine comes, and the coronavirus comes, and he tells you, "Oh, you need a vaccine to do it," knowing that he just said that we need vaccines to get rid of half the people in the world. That's power. He can do what no one else can do. No one calls him on it. In the same way, Cardinal Cupich can do things no one other cardinal can do. For example, in January of this year, Cardinal Cupich issued a public condemnation of Archbishop Jose Gomez, who's the president of the United States Catholic Conference Bishop, United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, because all he did was chastise the recently inaugurated Joe Biden over his support of a prolicide, the legal killing of one's own offspring, abortion as we call it. And then issued a separate statement congratulating Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who had done nothing up to that point but persecute Catholics, and said hopes to work with them on things like healthcare, poverty, and racism. While all other bishops, such as Tobin and of New York and McElroy of San Diego, also issue letters congratulating Biden, only Cupich attacked his own bishop's conference for doing nothing but telling the truth. And while some of his peers like Pat Brocky of Springfield, Illinois, sided with Gomez, none of them publicly chastised Cupich. Why? Because Cupich can do what no one else can do. The second rare quality of truly powerful people is that they can get A to do something that A otherwise would not do. Right? They can get you to do something that you would not otherwise do. Powerful people can do that. Again, America's Pope, Cardinal Cupich, is all powerful in this country. Let me give you two examples of this rare power that he uses to undermine the Catholic Church in America and empower Democrats. Before Archbishop Gomez was able to release his letter that I just talked about, Cupich put in a call to the Vatican to ask to have them tell Archbishop Gomez to delay the release of his letter until Pope Francis, until they're able to release Pope Francis' letter congratulating Biden, right? To which Gomez assented, because he's not very powerful. In the most recent case, Cardinal Cupich flew to the Vatican very recently to speak with Cardinal Louis Ladaria, who is the prefect of the Congregation of Doctrine of Faith, about the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops' plan to develop a conference to approve a document regarding the worthiness of communion of Catholic politicians who support the legalization of prolicide, euthanasia, and other moral evils. And in response to that meeting, Ladaria issues a letter on May 7th asking the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops to slow walk that document they're working on until President Biden is out of office, and attempting to hold the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops to a standard that no one has ever held, that no one else in the Catholic Church has been held to. He asked them to be completely unanimous on such a document that they're going to write about saving people's souls, which even the apostles, like I said, no ecumenical conference of the church was ever expected to live up to. So, at least on two of these instances, Cardinal Cupich has done what no one else in the Catholic Church has been able to do in the United States, because he's America's Pope. I mean, he's done what people in prison are not allowed to do, right? In prison, people who go behind their fellow inmates' back to work with the prison guards to undermine the inmates always, inevitably, get stitches, right? Snitches get stitches. That's just the rule. But time and time again, Cupich undermines the effort of his own conference of bishops, who all they're trying to do, albeit a day late and $1 short, is try to protect the whole Eucharist against sacrilege, protect souls from condemnation, and inspire people to believe in church leadership. They're just trying to do the right thing. but at every turn they're being undermined with the kiss of Judas. And why hasn't Cardinal Cupich been rebuked by this? Because he's America's Pope. He has power. He can get A to do something that A would not otherwise do. Gomez is only a face of the American bishops. Cupich is a real leader. He runs this country. He's America's Pope. Cupich was even he was even allowed to stop an entire beatification. He's one of the people who sent a letter to Rome asking them to cease the cause of canonization of Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen. And again, no rebuke of America's Pope because they fear him. Okay, the last mark of truly powerful people. Powerful people are protected from others, getting them to do what they wouldn't otherwise do. So powerful people who have power to get people to do what they would not otherwise do are protected from people having power against them, right? You think of in sports again, we could talk about Walter Payton, Tom Brady, Wayne Gretzky. You can try to stop them, but they are so great that few could. Since 2016, Cardinal Cupich has been appointed to the Congregation of Bishops. These are the people who oversee the selection of bishops in this throughout the world. And since that time, Cupich has filled posts in the United States of bishops like him, people who support his and Pope Francis' ideology. And it may be the case pretty soon here that Cupich may become the prefect for the entire congregation of bishops and play a more significant role in appointing bishops throughout the world. And that's scary. But this is how powerful people protect themselves. They surround themselves with people like them. They insulate themselves from threats. This is why Cupich is a rare species of power in the Catholic Church and why he is America's Pope. His political acumen, his political awareness, and timing has not been matched in human modern history. People like him do not become Pope. People like him decide who's the next Pope. So that's all I know about that. Right after the break, we will have Miss Jannique Stewart on from Love Protects. She's a speaker and apologist at Life Training Institute. She'll be on to talk about the upcoming Supreme Court review of the Mississippi post-15-week abortion ban. And so we'll be right back after the break. Stay tuned in to the David O. Gray Show, voicing truth and reason on the Guadalupe Radio Network.
What's wrong, Sissel?
I'm just so sad that I have to wait so long for our summer speaker series with Father John Ricardo on August 5th. I'm so excited.
Well, you know, the summer months are so fast, they go by quickly. It'll be here before you know it.
I guess.
But one way you can pass the time is to invite your friends to get their tickets.
That's a great idea. I can invite my prayer group, my best friend, my great Aunt Ruth, my cousin.
Oh boy, I have no idea how long that list is going to go on. Go to summerspeakerseries.com and get your tickets to see Father Ricardo on August 5th. Again, summerspeakerseries.com.
Thank you for listening to the Guadalupe Radio Network and being part of the family. Families pray for each other. We would be honored if you would let us pray with you and for you. You don't even have to tell us your name. Just go to our website, grnonline.com, or call our prayer request line and leave us a message at 800-395-4008. That's 800-395-4008. We will be praying for you every day.
It's your mission, not just ours, so you also get the credit for it. We often receive feedback from listeners just like you about how this Catholic radio apostolate has deeply impacted their life. Among my personal favorites are the many testimonies from priests who have heard penitents in the confessional tell them that it was Catholic radio which helped to save their marriage or brought them back to the faith after decades. In the digital world, you have provided an invaluable resource to thousands of souls who can tune into your radio station anonymously. That means every day, through the GRN, you are casting wide the seeds of the Catholic faith, sharing the good, the true, and the beautiful to a world who is desperate to hear that message, a message of hope. Because the GRN is 100% listener-funded, you get the credit, storing up treasure in heaven. Thank you for being fellow missionaries with the GRN.
Welcome back into Voicing Truth and Reason, the David L. Gray Show on Guadalupe Radio Network. So happy to have you back in after the break. So like I said, the second half of the show is Pro-Life Wednesday. So we have our favorite person back in the studio, Miss Jannique Stewart from Love Protects. And she's executive director of Love Protects. And also she's a speaker and apologist at Life Training Institute. Also, make sure that you guys, if you haven't already, make sure you go out there and you subscribe to our podcast. Jannique and I were talking about some very interesting things. We're doing a podcast called Hollywood versus Holiness. And so we're doing reviews of things that's going on in Hollywood and music and film and TV shows. So we're having a great time. We're building an audience. We have some exciting guests coming up in the future as well. So make sure you go out there and just type into the Google or whatever, Hollywood versus Holiness, and subscribe to us on the YouTube and on Rumble. Miss Jannique Stewart, how you doing?
I am well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for coming back on for Pro-Life Wednesdays, as always.
Oh, thank you for having me, as always. I always appreciate coming on your show.
Yeah. So we're talking about today. So I guess on Monday, the Supreme Court has decided to take up a case that some people are calling a test case out of Mississippi, which the Mississippi law has bans most abortions after 15 weeks, slightly before, I guess, what they call fetal viability, right? And so, so the legislation passed it, and then the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals is actually pretty conservative, as they say, but they blocked the enforcement of the law, saying that it conflicted with Roe versus Wade and subsequent abortion decision. So what's going on here, Ms. Stewart?
Sure. Well, a couple of things. First, I want to remind everyone that right now, what most people would say, according to the medical community, that the age of viability right now is around 22 weeks. Now, keep in point, though, that the reason why this whole case is important is because right now, when it comes to people using the term viability, it's actually tying a law to technology, and specifically the limits of technology. What do I mean by that? Well, to be quite honest and to be quite fair, if we want to be accurate with this, viability is a changing spectrum, and it's completely tied to the levels and the type of technology that we have at this time. It has in fact, the limits of viability have changed and fluctuated. Back in 1973, when Roe v. Wade was actually decided, at that point, viability was about 2 months premature. So around anywhere between 28 to 29 weeks technically was kind of where they drew the line at viability. Well, that has changed. In fact, at one point it was 26 weeks, then it was 24, now it's 22. But did you all know that in the past 2 years, we've actually had a baby that was born and survived at 20 weeks as well as 21 weeks. So it is a continuous changing spectrum. I also think it's important for people to recognize that viability in the United States is different than viability in other countries. So do we really believe that a person's right to live should be limited and controlled by technology? That really is important, just for people to kind of get their minds around, why are we even talking about viability? Now, with this specific case, this Mississippi law that was enacted in 2018 bans abortions after 15 weeks. Now, with regards to this case going before the Supreme Court, it's called Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. When the Supreme Court holds their oral arguments in October, they will be answering one single question. And here it is: are all pre-viability abortion bans unconstitutional? Again, that single question we'll be looking at is whether or not all pre-viability abortion bans are unconstitutional. Now,
so dig deeper
let's kind of
into
look
that.
at
What is that? So what is a specific question? What does that mean? That specific thing that they're looking at? Is that just going to apply to just Mississippi?
Well, no, not necessarily. I think that this is actually what they're ultimately trying to do, and what can actually happen as a result of this. Okay, so let's actually I'll come back to that question, because I'm actually going to lay that out as to what ultimately can happen. What does this ultimately mean? Like, what's the big deal? But before I actually get into that, I do want us to consider one thing. There is no guarantee or a right to abortion or a right to kill in the Constitution. That's really important, because people like to say things like, oh, but that would be unconstitutional. Well, nowhere in the Constitution, David, do we actually have a right to kill another human being. Even the right to abortion under Roe v. Wade, that is not part of a Constitution. That is simply a law, courtesy of the Supreme Court. And it actually isn't even really technically a law. What it is the Supreme Court handles down an opinion. That's what they do, is they hand down an opinion. They don't actually create law. So that's a whole other aspect, but I do think it's important that we speak truth. So there is no constitutional right to kill another human being. In fact, even underneath the 14th Amendment, where it actually says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor, here we go, shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person with its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. So the 14th Amendment guarantees equal protection underneath the law, and the state is not supposed to deprive human beings. So when anyone brings up the Constitution, I like to help them remind them, well, wait a minute, we're actually guaranteed a right to life. We're not supposed to deprive human beings of that. Now, that being said, then I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Oh yeah, I was
David,
completely agreeing with you that the Constitution defends life if you breed it as you just said. So yeah, that's amazing.
Oh, good. So I did want to just kind of lay that out. Now, so most people then will ask, okay, so what can actually happen there then? If they do hear this, what can we actually see happen with Roe? Because basically it's a test case. It's a test case against them, and so we're going to see what actually could happen. There's only one of three possible options, okay? The worst outcome would be where they would basically reinforce Roe, just as they did with Planned Parenthood versus Casey in 1992. Essentially what they could do is try and protect Roe v. Wade further and kind of codify it all the more, which I'll come back to in a second, because we know underneath the Biden administration, they've actually echoed that's their goal, is to protect Roe. The second thing that can happen, and perhaps the most likely outcome, is that the courts would uphold the Mississippi law and allow for pre-viability restrictions, so prior to that 22 or 24 weeks, but at the same time, they would not overturn the central holdings of Roe or Casey. Now, in this scenario then, pro-life states would be able to restrict abortion after the first trimester, which, yes, would be a victory, but it only gets us as far as just that. You know, it's not completely dismantling Roe v. Wade. The third outcome is that the court would use Dobson as a vehicle to overturn Roe. Now, this, of course, would be the outcome that I think everyone is probably hoping for, towards which the legal and political arms of the pro-life movement have definitely been working for the past several decades. Now, as a reminder, this would only allow for states to make their own decisions about abortion restrictions. So just simply because you overturn Roe, it does not create a national ban against abortion. What it does is it kicks abortion then down to each state to decide what are the limits that we're going to have with regards to abortion.
And so I thought that was fascinating from the very beginning when you were talking about, and thanks for laying that out for us. And we're speaking with Ms. Jannique Stewart. She's the executive director at Love Protects, and she's the speaker and apologist at Life Training Institute. And we'll make sure to give you ways to connect with Jannique before we get off the air here. But essentially, you can just type in her name in Google, and she'll come up at Life Training Institute and Love Protects. She speaks throughout the world on the subject, so she's phenomenal, as you can hear. And thanks for laying that out. And so I thought that was fascinating, your first point about how science should not determine life. And so the second outcome that you laid here, that, well, they could affirm this case and say that life states can enact laws to protect life after a certain time of viability of some, in the second trimester. But do you think, Jannique, is that something that people, pro-lifers, is this something we should rejoice in? Because there's some people who are pro-lifers and they're against things such as the heartbeat bill. They say everything or nothing.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts on that? Is it a victory or is it not?
Listen, I think with anything, there are multiple ways to look at it. And some people have a problem with incrementalism, which was what they would actually call that, is incremental rather than saying, nope, we want a complete ban of all abortions 100%. Here's the question we need to ask is, if we have an opportunity to save some people, do we say, nope, if I can't save all, then I won't save any? Think about when, for example, there is a national disaster, whether it is a hurricane or think about even when you've seen where firemen go into a burning building. They are going to try and get those that they can. Now, is there a chance that they might not be able to reach every single person in that burning building? Absolutely. But do they say, well, unless we can save everyone, we're going to say no? No, they didn't do that during 9/11. They don't do that whenever there is an earthquake. They don't say, well, and think about an earthquake or whenever there's like a tsunami and there's all this rubble. They try immediately, they go into action. I don't believe they have the mentality, well, if we can't save every human being, then we're not even going to try. No, let's try and save who we can. Now, that doesn't mean that when there is this type of incremental legislation that, for example, take the heartbeat bill, which says when a heartbeat's detected, a baby is protected. That does not mean that the value of human life begins at the heartbeat, but we know that is a marker that they definitely can use, and that is it is a nationally or a worldwide recognized heartbeat. So whenever they hear that heartbeat, the baby is protected. That does not mean that babies who have yet to have a heartbeat, that their lives are not valuable. But what they're moving is they moved that line of when there is a license to kill. They've moved it all the way up significantly. I mean, think about it, significantly earlier than at any other point. So, to me, we do have to look at these incremental gains and ask ourselves, are human lives being saved that would not be saved if we did not have these laws in place? And the answer is, yes, we're saving lives that would not ordinarily be saved. It doesn't mean that we stop there, but we've moved that goalpost to now include more people, and we're going to keep pushing that goalpost further and further until every single human being's life is protected in the womb.
Yeah. And we're speaking with Miss Jannique Stewart here. If you have a question about this Mississippi test case is going up to the Supreme Court. If you have a question about anything in particular about this Pro-Life Wednesday, please call in, opine, or comment. 877-757-9424. Again, that's 877-757-9424. Jannique, so it's going to be one of those outcomes, like you said. I can't imagine that there's going to be any other outcome than one of those three. People who loved babies in the womb over the years we've been disappointed from time to time. We've kept voting for pro-life candidates to go as president or for senators, and oftentimes they've campaigned on a promise that we're going to appoint people to Supreme Court so we've been hoping for a legislative solution to this, or a judicial solution to child murder in a womb. And what would you say to pro-life people so that they aren't? What is the real fight? Because I don't want, if something happens like it has happened with Planned Parenthood Casey, I don't want people to get disappointed and feel like we don't have a chance. Talk about what the real battle is here.
Well, I would say, that's an excellent question, because the real battle is whether or not we value human life from womb to tomb. We know that when we talk about the abortion issue, this really is the issue at hand. This is the greatest human rights violation of our day. It's not so-called police brutality. It isn't anything else that we can talk about right now. The greatest human rights violation of our day is abortion. The right to kill one's child, a defenseless, vulnerable human being, because they stand in the way of something that we want to do. That essentially is the issue. That's why we have to ask the question, what is the unborn? The science of embryology, David, there is no question about this. The science of embryology is clear that from the very earliest stages of our development, you and I, when we were developing inside of our mom, we were not part of her body. We were in her body. But the science of embryology clearly states that we were living, meaning we were alive. That's why her belly was growing. We were distinct, meaning separate from her body, but we were whole human beings nonetheless. From the very earliest of stages, we are a whole human being. And because we are a whole human beings have what? Human rights. And the most basic human right is the right to life. Now, that said, many people will say, okay, fine, I will grant you that maybe the unborn is a human being, but it doesn't mean that it is a person that we have a responsibility to protect. Well, ask yourself this question. When's the last time you met a human being that was not a person? That was the same argument used during the time of slavery, where, yes, slaves might have been human, but we were also considered property. We were not considered persons underneath the law. That is problematic when you try and divide human beings into classes where we have human beings that are persons and humans that are not persons that we can intentionally mistreat and kill. Anytime people are looking to mistreat an entire group of human beings, what do? They try and use arbitrary characteristics to declassify them, to dehumanize, and to devalue them so that they can mistreat, and in this case, so that they can kill another human being. Now, when it comes to personhood, people will try and say, well, the unborn isn't really a person like you and I because of one of four characteristics, and you can remember it as SLED: size, level of development, environment, and differing degrees of dependency. Yes, the unborn might be smaller, but since when do we kill human beings and deprive human beings of basic human rights simply because of their size? Men are generally taller than women, but we would never say we can kill women simply because they're not as tall as men. Level of development. Yes, the unborn are less developed, but as you're going to see, those four differences, while they do exist, David, inside the womb, they still exist outside the womb. Therefore, they're not morally relevant to say that you could have been killed then, but not now. I just went through size, level of development. Yes, the unborn is less developed, but that even changes within the womb. At the very beginning, very obviously, they're very much less developed than they would be even at 7 months of gestation, or even at 9 months of gestation, even though abortion is legal through all 9 months of pregnancy. But even after that baby comes out of the womb, it still isn't as developed as it will be when it's 2 years old. And 2-year-olds are not as developed as those who have gone through puberty, and those that are teenagers are not as developed as their parents. But we would never deprive teenagers or toddlers or even newborn babies of a basic right to life simply because they're not as developed as those around them. That E is environment. Yes, because of where that baby's located, many will say, well, because it's inside of her, that's the environment, that somehow in her means part of her. It doesn't. And since when do we kill people based on their address? We don't. The unborn inside that woman is still a human being. And since when does where you are change what you are and change your value? It doesn't. We don't kill people based on their address. And lastly is that D, that degree of dependency. Some will say, but yes, that baby depends on her body. Again, there's differing degrees of dependency in utero, just as there's differing degrees of dependency outside of the womb. Newborn babies are still very dependent upon that woman, but it's different than a 2-year-old who is still dependent upon its parents. But even some people listening right now are probably thinking, my high school students and my college students are still dependent upon mom and dad, especially during the time of COVID. But the reality is we do not deprive human beings of the basic right to life because of their different degrees of dependency. That's a very problematic view, because either we're going to view human beings in virtue of the kind of being that they are, which is a human being, and intrinsic to being a human being, we have intrinsic dignity. So that means we have inherent value and worth, or we're going to look at human beings based on function, or very much like an instrument. Their instrumental view or instrumental value that's based on performance. That's problematic. And so that's why we always have to kind of remind people about the science of embryology, that is very clear that the unborn are human beings regardless, and because they're human beings, they have that right to life, and that we're not supposed to treat or value or view human beings from that functional, instrumental view. We should look at human beings who have inherent dignity because of the kind of being that we are. We're image bearers of the Most High God. So that is just just to simplify this and to bring clarity to it. We do want to kind of simplify that conversation so that people understand what is really at hand is whether or not we will continue to slaughter the most vulnerable among us, which are the unborn. And David, I do want to remind the audience, since 1973 Roe v. Wade, we're talking about a mass genocide of approximately 60 million human beings. If that is not the definition of genocide, I don't know what is.
All right. And we're speaking with Miss Jannique Stewart. She's Executive Director at Love Protects and apologist and speaker at Life Training Institute. She's amazing. You can look her up online. Make sure you also subscribe to our podcast, Hollywood versus Holiness. Hey, Jannique, we got a caller on the line that we're going to get to in a moment. Joseph, he has a comment that I'd like you to respond to.
Sure.
But real quick, give us the letter assigned to SLIDE, your acronym here, to address size, level.
SLED? Yes, SLED.
Yes, SLED.
Size? Yes, size. The L is level of development. The E is environment. And the D is differing degrees of dependency.
All right. So SLED. That's why I wasn't able to work on my acronym wasn't coming together because I had an I in here because I thought you said slide, but it's SLED. So size, level of development,
SLED.
Environment, and dependency, levels of dependency. So that's an amazing acronym. Did you develop that in your skills as an apologist, or did you find that somewhere?
Did not. That was actually by Stephen. That was actually developed by Stephen Schwartz, the philosopher, and then made popular by the president of the organization that I work with, the Life Training Institute, Scott Plusendorf, is the one that actually made it very popular. Yes. And so that is one of the things that we use just to help people, because many people will say things like, oh, but, the unborn might be human, but it doesn't make it a person. And so we really kind of want to point out that there's only two ways to view a human being, either from that instrumental view or that functional view, or from our inherent view or the intrinsic view that says that because we are human beings, there's something that is inherent within all of us. In fact, that is what grounds human equality, David. What grounds human equality is not our abilities. I mean, think about it. There are people who are more physically gifted than other people. There are those who are more athletically gifted than others. You know, we're not all equal in terms of our physical abilities, even our intellectual abilities. But the one thing that we all share equally is what? Our humanity. And so that's why it's important to point out that most people will try and point to differences. Sometimes they'll even say, well, what about consciousness and things like that, which go back to the size and the level of development or age. That abortion is age discrimination. When we say, and when we try and use arbitrary characteristics to point out why we don't need to protect the unborn, they generally fall into one of those four categories. But as I pointed out, while those differences, yes, they do exist in the womb, they also exist outside of the womb. Therefore, they're not morally relevant to say that we could have been killed at that earlier stage in the womb, but somehow not now when those same differences still exist.
Yeah. Awesome. And let's bring Joseph in. Joseph had a comment about how the government protects endangered species. Joseph, calling in from Houston. How you doing? Thanks for calling in today.
Excellent, Mr. Gray. Statement I had to make is the federal government recognizes endangered species, sea turtles. If you hurt an egg, you get punished. So how is it the federal government puts more value on an unborn turtle and not an unborn person? It seems like we do not care about human beings, but we will recognize that there's a turtle growing in an egg, even though it's not physically a turtle.
Oh,
I'll
exactly.
take my answer off
That's
the
an
air.
excellent point. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph, for calling in from Houston. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for calling in. I think that's an excellent point because, like loggerhead sea turtles, for example, in Florida, you can be fined up to, I think at some points it's up to like $25,000, possibly even more. Even with the bald eagle. The bald eagle is also considered an endangered species. We have all these different endangered species that the government will intentionally try and protect, but when it comes to unborn life, they act as if they don't know, and that's when people will say things like, well, we don't really know when life begins. You see, and people start doing that moonwalk, literally, trying to pretend they don't know what the unborn is, or they don't know when life begins. And David, that is why that simple question is critically important. When we're talking about the abortion issue, we must ask that one question: what is the unborn? Philosopher Greg Koukl says, listen, and here's a really great tool that you can actually use. Imagine if you were home right now and you were in the kitchen cooking or maybe cleaning, and you have a child that runs in holding something, but because your back is turned, you can't see them, but they're holding something, and they say, Mom, Dad, can I please kill this? Can I kill this? Now, what question would you have to ask, David, before you could say yes or no?
What is it? What are you
exactly?
What are you trying to kill?
What is it? Yes, what is it is that critical question. You see, if the unborn is human, then there is no justification adequate to intentionally kill the unborn human being. But if the unborn is nothing more than a spider, if your child was holding a spider or an ant, you probably wouldn't say, well, you would have less of an issue with them killing a bug. But if they had their sister or brother in a headlock, you probably wouldn't say, sure, go on and kill it, right? Of course not. That critical question, what is the unborn, that is a game changer. It lays the foundation of the conversation, and it gets it off of the reason somebody wants to have an abortion. Listen, the reason somebody wants to have an abortion does not change the reality of abortion, David. That every single abortion will intentionally kill an innocent human being. So like I just said, if the unborn is a human being, then there is no justification that's adequate. But if the unborn is not a human being, then there is no justification needed or is necessary. So that's why we have to ask that central question, what is the unborn? And every single person that's listening, we should be committed to that. Because we know the government oftentimes, and we know Planned Parenthood, they're often committed to whether it's money. Planned Parenthood is all about money. They're also committed to perhaps the feminist mindset of second wave and even third wave feminism, which is all about whether or not that woman can climb up that corporate ladder, or for those in Hollywood, whether or not they're able to achieve the jobs that they so desire. And so with that mindset, they believe it's fully acceptable to sacrifice the life of a human child so that they can pursue their goals and dreams. I think that is a very myopic view. I think it's a very limiting view of women.
Yeah. And you've been listening to Voicing Truth and Reason on Guadalupe Radio Network. Ms. Jannique Stewart on for Pro-Life Wednesdays, phenomenal guest. Make sure you look her up if you're looking for a pro-life speaker. You look it up at Love Protects or Life Training Institute. Make sure you get her to your conference or your school. I know she's busy, but she may accommodate you. Thank you for tuning in. Be back same time, same place next week. I look forward to conversing with you again. In the meantime, visit me online at davidlgray.info. But until then, until next time, remember, Jesus loves you and is there for you. And live your life like salvation matters. And may the Lord's blessings and graces and favors fall upon you. Thank you.